Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this webinar today. We are so happy to have you here, and we'll get started in just a minute in talking about preparing for your audition. My name is Angela Mitchell. I'm the enrollment specialist for the Lamont School of Music. And for our attendees that are here, please feel free throughout this webinar to ask questions or make comments. You can utilize the Q&A feature here, and we will answer as many of your questions as we can. And feel free to go ahead and put questions in right away if you want. We're going to give it just another minute or so to allow people to log in. All right, welcome everybody to this Lamont Admission webinar on preparing for your audition. This is one of the most important parts about applying to music school, and we're going to give you, first of all, an overview of Lamont's process for how we look at your application and accept your recording. Then we're going to give you a few tips and tricks on making a great recording. Then we have a couple of Lamont students on hand to talk about their experiences with auditions. And finally, we'll spend the bulk of this webinar hearing from our wonderful faculty panel. I'll officially introduce them in a little bit, but we have violinist Igor Pikayzen, trumpet player Alan Hood, and vocalist Catherine Kasch on hand. We will wrap up after that with questions from the audience. All right, so this first slide here is an overview of Lamont's process. A lot of information on this page, and I'm going to just go through each little bit here. Your first step in the process, which I think a few of you have already done, which I recognize some names here, filling out the application to the University of Denver. We accept the Common App. We also have our own in-house application known as the Pioneer app. You can use either one. From a music perspective, the key thing to do on this application is selecting your major, and you have 5 choices for music. There is one that's just called music, and that would be if you're going for the Bachelor of Arts in Music, which is distinct from our 4 Bachelor of Music degrees, in that the BA in music has fewer music credits attached to it, and you have fewer performance related requirements. Whereas the Bachelor of Music degrees are the conservatory style degrees in which the majority of what you're focusing on in school will be music, and you will take hour-long lessons on your primary instrument or voice every week. You will give a recital if you're in performance or jazz studies, and you will also be participating in ensembles, 2 ensembles every quarter. So there's the choices for that are performance, recording and production, composition, and jazz studies. So once you select that major on the Common App or the Pioneer app, and it's one of those music degrees, you will be getting a confirmation email from DU that includes a link to your application status page. You'll see a screenshot on the right-hand side of the screen there of what that application status page will really look like. So this is an actual application, and you can see there that you've got the Lamont School of Music application listed under your application checklist. Very, very important as a music major that you fill this out. It is how we will be scheduling your interview for one thing, and how we get a little more information from you from a musical perspective. Make sure that you choose on that Lamont application the right intended degree program, that it matches what you put on the Common app or the Pioneer app. You'll choose your area of study. So that's your instrument or your voice type or composition. You will also have a chance on that application to select your preferred Zoom interview date. That's something new that we're doing this year. Lamont is not doing live auditions this year, but we did want to preserve some of that part of the process and have you still get to do a little bit of interacting live with our faculty. So you will be doing a live Zoom interview. You will rank your choice of interview date on the application. You will upload your recorded video audition and any supplemental materials in the portfolio section here, down here. And then once you fill out that preferred Zoom interview date, our office will schedule that and you will receive a confirmation of your Zoom interview. And the exact time, we will send that out to you about 2 weeks before your live Zoom interview. So that's the big change this year is no live audition, but we are doing live Zoom interview and we're asking for recorded video auditions from everybody. So here's an overview of that timeline. So right now, here in fall 2020, you're going to be focusing on getting all those application materials ready, filling out that application, working on your audition repertoire, and starting to think about recording that video. We do need all of that by January 15th, 2021. So that includes your recorded video audition, all of your materials, your transcripts, letters, test scores, by that deadline of January 15th. Those live Zoom interviews that I mentioned, those will be taking place on 3 consecutive Saturdays, January 30th, February 6th, and February 13th. You will be meeting with the faculty of that department. So if you're auditioning as a violinist, you will not only see Professor Pikayzen here, but you will see the entire string faculty. Likewise, if you're auditioning on voice, you will see not only Professor Kasch, but the entire voice faculty on your interview. You will get a chance to ask some questions of them. In fact, we encourage you to come prepared with some questions. And it's a chance really for them to get to know you as well. They may ask you to play or possibly sing something at your audition. Check your studio page for those specific requirements, whether or not you are should be ready to play one of your prepared pieces. In the first week of March, roughly, that's when we send out the admission decisions to students. And then you have until May 1st to let us know whether you are coming or not and make your deposit. All right. So we put together just a couple of tips for making a great audition video here. Use the best equipment you have on hand. We do not expect you to go out and buy expensive, fancy equipment. Usually an iPhone, a smartphone will work just fine. Make sure that you have good lighting so that we can see your face and your instrument and your hands. It's always better to film in landscape mode rather than in up and down profile. And then we do not want you to be making edits in the middle of pieces, although it is totally fine to stop the recording device in between pieces. Dress professionally. This is important. It really makes an impression on people how you dress to an audition, because it usually signals, you know, you're taking this very seriously if you come in dressed professionally, and that goes for a video as well. If possible, To get the best audio quality, it's sometimes advised to record the audio on a separate device, if possible, and then use some editing software to join the two media files together. We will be going into great detail on how to make a great audition recording in an upcoming 2-day workshop led by Lamont Summer Academy Director Conrad Keene. That's happening on November 23rd and November 24th. And in fact, we are inviting students who want to. We're to take up to 15 students who can actually participate in an interactive way. You can send in you can have your recordings done ahead of time, and Professor Keene will work with you on those. We're going to be sending out more information about that soon. We'll also drop a link in the chat about how to register for that if you are interested in participating in that workshop. And then if you're not one of those 15 people, then everyone else can absolutely observe the workshop. So that's coming up November 23rd and 24th. Okay. All right, so we have 2 Lamont students on hand that I want to just introduce right now. Julia and Hannah, you can go ahead and turn your cameras and mics on. They're going to tell us briefly about their best and worst audition experiences. Hannah's a freshman, Julia's a sophomore, so they've both gone through this fairly recently. It's always great to hear, I think, from those students who are just a year or two ahead of you. So Julia, why don't you go first, because I know you've got to get to a rehearsal at 5 o'clock. Julia is, as you can see, at school right now, and so she is remaining masked per the protocols of DU. So Julia, why don't you go first and give us your best and worst audition experiences?
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, awesome. Hi everybody. So I think probably we'll start off with the worst one. The worst audition experience I had, I would say was when I was recording my audition for Lamont. I did not give myself enough time to do so, and I was getting really stressed out. And I felt like I was doing it in a rush. So I guess a little piece of advice is to definitely give yourself time. Like record, it's not too early to record ever. Um, but yeah, so just definitely give yourself time to do so. Um, my best audition experience, is this like experience with auditioning for the music school or like auditioning just in general?
Just in general, how about?
Um,
And you don't have to give any names if you don't want to.
okay, cool. Uh, oh goodness, I have no idea. There's been too
Maybe it was
many.
one for the Lamont School because it was successful.
Yes, definitely. It definitely all paid off in the end. But I think my favorite audition experience that I had was when I was oddly enough auditioning for my youth orchestra, and I got into the highest level orchestra without even actually applying for that orchestra, which was pretty cool. So hard work pays off.
So you prepared really, really well for that audition and you felt like you just nailed it going into it?
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's go to Hannah now. Hannah, do you want to give us your best and worst audition experiences?
Yeah, I guess I could start with the worst one also. It was also when I was recording an audition. I gave myself enough time to learn and record the pieces, but didn't give myself enough time to upload the pieces. So I would highly recommend doing it at least 2 to 3 days before, because I did it 2 or 3 hours before, and it was really stressful just watching the thing just load, and it was really bad. And my best experience was probably when I was the most prepared, and actually I had a few more auditions beforehand, so I kind of knew what I was getting myself into. And it was actually DU that I felt really confident on my audition, and which was really nice, because when you go in feeling confident and you like know the pieces well, like if you almost have them memorized, that's when you know you've played them enough. But yeah, I think that was probably my best experience.
Awesome. Thank you guys both so much. I know, Julia, you've got to get to, is it wind ensemble rehearsal? Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Julia. And then Hannah, if you're able to stick around, we'd love to have you to answer any questions that students have in the chat. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, Julia. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to introduce our wonderful faculty panel. Let me just get back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so we have on hand 3 phenomenal Lamont faculty members. Catherine Kasch is a teaching associate professor of voice here at the Lamont School of Music, wonderful teacher. I have actually taken some lessons with her myself. She's amazing. We have Professor Alan Hood, who leads the trumpet studio. He is also co-chair of the Jazz Studies program. Nope, I got that wrong, Al. I'm sorry. You are the new chair of the brass department. And then we have, but Professor Al Hood also teaches jazz trumpet and classical trumpet here at Lamont. And then we have Professor Igor Pikayzen, who is one of our violin professors. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and have our 3 faculty members please turn on your cameras and mics. And I'm going to hand it off to Stephen Campbell, our Director of Admission here at the Lamont School of Music, and he's going to lead our Q&A with the faculty while I take over the chat.
Great, thank you, Angela. And faculty, thank you so much for joining us. This is great and a huge resource to our participants in this webinar, but also we're recording this webinar, and so it'll be available to students who weren't able to make it today, and so they'll be able to benefit from your expertise as well. So I just have a few questions general questions that I'd like to pose to each of you. And then we'll have some time, attendees, for you to drop some questions in the Q&A for our faculty and our students to answer as well. I'll start out with, what makes a successful audition? What are you listening for when you sit in on those auditions? And Igor, if you don't mind, we'll start with you.
Absolutely. Hi, Stephen, and hi, everyone. Good to be here. So it's a very good question. And I think beyond the obvious preparation, we are sure all the auditions will be well prepared, well practiced for. What I personally am looking for is engagement, how you engage me as a listener. So you have to demonstrate me why you're choosing this to be your career or why you're passionate about music. And once we hear that, I think that makes the biggest difference. What I will say is that I believe all of us as faculty, we want you to do well. And that's something I never realized as a student. I was always going into auditions, being nervous. You know, they listen to this tiny mistake or this scratch of sound. But what we really pay attention to as faculty is how passionate you are, how engaging you are, of course, your understanding of style as well, showing us that you've not only practiced what you are auditioning with, but you've really thought about it. You're really invested in it. And I think that's the one thing that makes people stand out and makes us remember you for your own unique individual interpretation, I would say.
Oh, thank you, Igor. Kathy, let's go to you next, and we'll finish up with Al on this question.
Well, I agree with Igor. We want to see your it factor. You know, we want to see you. We want to see your individuality. In the voice department, we love interesting voices, and we love people who are interested in singing. And I'm sure that's the same for all of the other instruments. So when you open up your audition, don't forget eye contact. Don't forget to smile so that we have a window into who you really, really are. And think of it as a two-way job interview. Yes, we want you to do well, but you're also interviewing us for the job as well, for the honor of teaching you and guiding you and mentoring you for the next 4 or 2 years. So it's both ways. We're looking for talent and you are looking for talent as well. So be discerning. Obviously, we're looking for someone who has a good sense of pitch, a good sense of musicality. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for someone who has the potential that can be tapped. So think about your phrasing, think about your expressivity, and show us your personality.
Great, thank you, Kathy.
Mhm.
Al, how about you?
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Hello, everybody. Those were two amazing answers, and all the things I just thought about, they both said. So I'll just reiterate a few of those things. There are fundamental things that whatever level of audition you take, a panel is looking for you to do well on. In the brass area and in other areas as well, it's going to be your general sound concept, the clarity and the ease and the connection of how you present yourself. Definitely having great time, feel, and having wonderful rhythmic integrity. And then, as Kathy mentioned, solid intonation, both relative to your instrument or voice, or if you're performing with another person or persons. And the ability to turn a phrase, of course, we're looking for musicianship, style, nuance of articulation, etc. But it all falls under that umbrella of what Igor said, and that's passion. Can we see your passion in what you're doing and what you're presenting, both live or on video? In the case of the brass area, we also have sight reading as part of the process. So we're just looking for how decent of a sight reader you are and how quick you are to respond to something new. Like, are you adaptable and able to deal with anything put in front of you? It doesn't count for or against you as much as we just want to see how you deal with that.
That's great advice. Thank you, all three. For the next question, we'll flip it. We'll start with Al, then go Kathy, over to Igor. So, given all that you just shared, what advice do you have for our applicants, for the auditioners, on how to prepare for a successful audition?
Well, definitely practice. A lot of people, if they're able to get with a very solid teacher or someone who gives them some great advice on how to turn that musical phrase, so to speak, you'll want to do a number of repetitions as far as recordings go on different days. And any given day, who knows what may happen. And then listen and pick out your best recordings, and then have that teacher or maybe some other qualified set of ears listen to it with you or for you and give you some advice on maybe how you can improve it. So it's an ongoing process where you're going to end up with this best product to present at any of your auditions.
Great, thanks, Al.
Sure.
Go ahead, Kathy. What do you have to add to that?
Well, number one, the quality of your collaborative pianist is going to make a big difference. If you find a good pianist who is musical, that's going to bring the musicality right out of you. And as Al said, it's important to be working with a teacher right now, someone who can guide you. If you're singing a song, an aria in a foreign language, know the not know the language, but know the diction of that language and be as accurate as possible. Also, know what your translation is if you're singing in a foreign language, and make sure that your face reflects what's happening in that character's mind, so that we can see that expressivity come across the stage lights or the Zoom screen, as it were. But preparedness, make sure you warm up vocally before you make that recording so that your voice is readied. And attire, make sure that you wear the proper attire, that's anything that you would wear for a job interview. Singers especially, no high heels. It will cut off your breathing mechanism and you won't be able to breathe. And I must say too, for other instruments, if if you're wearing high stacked heels, it's just distracting. You can't get a good sense of how your body is grounded to the floor. So wear something that you can do your job in that is not distracting us as your audience.
Great advice. Thank you, Kathy. On to you, Igor.
Well, I mean, I couldn't agree more with both of my colleagues. That's some wonderful advice. Certainly applies to violin and string auditions as well. Two tips I would add, and Alan, Kathy already alluded to this. But first of all, your repertoire choice. It really has to show you in your best light. So for violinists, if you're picking a particular Paganini caprice, what about that caprice makes you stand out? If you're playing a concerto, why did you choose that concerto? And ideally, we can understand it from the audition. It's something that you should be passionate about, obviously, but it should also be something that demonstrates your performance in the best possible light. So that's one of my tips. The other one that I would suggest, both for Lamont and other schools, but in the case of Lamont, I do know that our faculty are exceptionally generous with their time. I would certainly reach out to all the professors that you're considering studying with and ask them for a trial lesson. You'll be surprised at how many of them are more than happy to meet with you. And even the few tips that they can give you might go a long way. It will save you a lot of time. And it's also a wonderful way to connect with someone that might be teaching you for the next 4 years, especially now when a lot of the time you won't have a chance to meet them in person. So I would suggest reaching out to your potential professors at Lamont and elsewhere and ask them to play for them. And you'd be surprised at how many of them respond positively to that.
Thanks, Igor. Yeah, to add on to that last piece of advice, that is a huge component of what we instruct all of our applicants and auditionees to do. Reach out to the faculty, start to get to know them. And many of you are offering prospective student lessons. We semi-joke that that's a win-win, right? Because they'll come in and either they'll have an awesome, or they'll have a lesson that's fine, but then they come in, they show improvement at their audition, and you remember and you say, hey, look how much they improved after only one lesson with me, right? They're going to be so much better after 4 years. But then the opposite is also good. Say they come in and do an awesome lesson, but then kind of have an off day on the audition. You have more to consider, right? You've heard them on 2 different days. So that really is a win-win situation for students to connect with you beforehand and maybe get some feedback on their audition reps. So thanks for bringing that up, Igor. Now, especially this year, but every year this is the case, it's not just an audition, right? There's an interview portion, or at least some Q&A, a little bit of back and forth between the auditioner and the faculty. And so this year is going to happen via Zoom, but even when it was in person, there was some of that as well. And Kathy, you mentioned this in your answer to your first question, that this is a give and take, right? They're auditioning us in the same way, or auditioning you in the same way that we are auditioning them, right? They want to know whether or not this is going to be a good fit for them over 4 years. So what do you want to learn from the auditioner in the interview portion? So we've moved past the performing. In the Q&A, what are you looking to learn from them? And then what do you want them to learn from you? So what are some questions you may suggest that they ask you during that interview portion? And Kathy, let's go ahead and start with you. You haven't gotten to start one of these. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, think about some things that you're interested in knowing about Lamont. For instance, what's the culture like? Is it hyper competitive, cutthroat, or is it competitive with compassion and kindness? And that's important, because we want people in the community of Lamont. I think we have a very positive community. I always hear that from people that have auditioned, and maybe they got in some other places too, and at the beginning of the year I'll say, okay, why did you choose Lamont? And one of the reasons has always been, and I've been here 21 years, I liked the feel. I liked how positive it was. So we truly try to keep it that way. Of course it's competitive, but we try to try to deliver that in a positive way. But we also want positive people. We're looking for people that are well-rounded, that are good citizens, so just be thinking of a question. Also, I think it's important, and believe me, I want you to ask the questions that you want, and make sure that you get that information. But remembering too that we've probably got maybe 20, 25 auditions that day. So, stay on track, engage us, and we'll engage you, but then land the plane. We've had a couple of people through the years that talked and talked and talked, and that gives us information too, in that situation. So, we want to know what your dreams are, what you envision yourself doing in 10 years. In an ideal world, we want to know that you're a good person. You're going to be a good citizen here. You're going to be a good colleague. So there's a lot you can tell about that when we have the interview. And the interview's always been important. Ever since I've been here, we spend time with the person. And that's a glimpse of what you're going to get at Lamont too. You're going to get a lot of individual attention. So there you go.
That's great. That's great. Before we move on to Igor to give his thoughts on that question, there was a question that just came in the chat about composition, auditions, and application processes. And I just wanted to point out to those of you that are listening, we've invited these faculty to share their expertise with you. And much of what they are sharing is applicable across the board, not just to trumpet or brass and voice or violin and strings. But if you have questions specific to your instruments, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them, and we'll get some insight from the faculty we have here as applicable. So Igor, go ahead. So what are you looking to learn from the applicant during the interview, and what do you want the applicant to learn from you during the interview?
Well, I think Kathy phrased it beautifully. First and foremost, what are their goals? Why are you interested in Lamont, and why are you interested in studying with myself or one of my colleagues? What drives you? And it's something that will evolve over your 4 years or 2 years, and it is certainly open to change. But of course, I want to know what you're hoping to achieve. What's your goal? Whether it's chamber music, a solo career, teaching, orchestra, a combination of all four, or beyond. So that's first and foremost. And finding out how I could potentially help you get on that road, on that pathway to your desired career. Now, of course, we're all interested in your history with music, your experience with chamber music, orchestra, collaborating with colleagues, which is exceptionally important in any music program. I think doubly so in Lamont. Chamber music is an integral part of the whole program. It's something that I think every Lamont student is very much invested in. So we want to know about your experience and your thoughts and your wishes in chamber music. And of course, we want you to reach out. We want to know something about your personality, not just your playing. And that's why, as Kathy has already mentioned, yes, we are usually quite busy on audition days and our schedules are packed. But I would say all of us are open to more correspondence. So if there is a question that you forgot about because you were nervous or we didn't have time for, always feel free to follow up before the audition, after the audition, and no question is too small for us to answer. It also gives us a better understanding of who you are and what you want to achieve in Lamont and why you want to attend. So those would probably be my top tips.
Great, thanks Igor. And if you've tuned in to any of these webinars, participants, you know that Angela and our favorite refrain is there are no dumb questions, right? Reach out to us, whether or not that's admission or faculty, we are here to support you through this process. So thank you for bringing that up, Igor. All right, I'll take us home on this question.
Oh boy, that was absolutely beautifully covered by my colleagues. But I'll add and reiterate some things. Some typical questions we ask in the brass area when an auditionee comes in is, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? And they'll answer, and what about 10 years? So we want to see like what the student is thinking about. Like, do they have a clear trajectory of what they want to do in their future plans and maybe how to get there? we want to know a little bit about their work ethic, a little bit. Do you study privately? Who do you study with? Those kinds of things. What groups do you play in and outside of your school environment? What are your hobbies and interests? All that kind of information. It also gives us an idea of their sense of community and how they work well with other people. We're definitely looking for that. And Igor mentioned that, you know, we might typically ask, why did you choose Lamont? What brought you your interest towards Lamont? Have a really great answer for that. Do some research, because oftentimes people are kind of taken by surprise, like, well, it looks cool. Or, you know, it's in Denver. I really love Denver. But do a little research. You'll do yourself a big favor as far as answering that question. As far as what we'd hopefully love for you to find out about us is, what is the environment like here? What is the Lamont vibe? What is the brass studio vibe? It's a family atmosphere, by the way, just as Kathy mentioned. You might ask about the teaching style of your prospective professor. What is a typical week like? What ensembles might I play in while I'm there? What is the experience level of the entire faculty? Like, what am I getting myself into here? So kind of things like that. And also we have a lot of questions, important questions about, does Lamont have a flexible enough program where I can do several things at once while I'm at Lamont? And we do. And that's really crucial to find out how you can combine all of your interests in what you can do in a collegiate environment. So those are some things I would add on to that.
Yeah, that is really, really great advice from all three of you. Thank you so much for sharing that. There was a Q&A that came through while you all were talking about the audition process in terms of deadlines and how long interviews will be. And so I just wanted to drop in the chat for you attendees the link to our studio pages. And Angela responded to the question saying that, you know, it will depend somewhat on your studio. So go ahead and follow that link to your area of study. And while the general requirements for the interview are pretty consistent from place to place, there are some changes. Al mentioned sight reading will be part of the Zoom interview in the brass area. So be sure to check that link and see what are the specific requirements for your area. But yeah, that 15 minutes or so is probably about what you can expect, folks, when you tune into that Zoom portion of the audition. So those are all the questions we had planned for our faculty panel. Attendees, please pipe up with some questions. We have great expertise here, both in faculty and staff and student, and Hannah is still here to answer her experience. And Hannah just went through that so recently, just last year. And so it's fresh in her mind, I'm sure. And for those of you that are seniors and are applying this year and are going to be going through this process, it's a little bit different from our normal non-COVID process. You may have specific questions about how we're handling that, right? So feel free to ask that. A lot of what we have shared today is applicable in every year. But of course, this is our first year doing pandemic auditions. So we're happy to answer any questions you have about that as you consider them. So we have one for you now.
Oh, this is a great question that just came in from one of our attendees pertaining to recorded auditions. So a lot of times recording can be more stressful than a live audition, because with a live audition, you just do it once and then it's done. But with recording, you know, there can be more pressure to get it perfect. So the question is about, like, where do you draw the line about getting that perfect recording, or are a couple of cracked notes, you know, flubbed notes, okay?
Faculty, you can just jump in as you feel moved.
Well, I don't think there's all live performances. There isn't a perfect live performance, and recorded performance. Again, we're not looking for perfection either. This is also where your voice teacher comes in for good advice, because they know what you're capable capable of, or any instrument, not just a voice teacher, but any instrumental teacher. They know what you're capable of. And I always say, if you do 85% of what you're capable of under a tense situation, you've done a really good job. So it's a collaboration with you and your teacher, and saying, you know, I think you did it. I think that's a good take. And you know, don't wear yourself out. If you've got just one evening to record, remember the instrument is only going to last so long. So make sure you do it while it's fresh. We can hear the potential. So again, we're not looking for perfection. We can hear what's in there.
Yeah, I would also add on to that, there is no such thing as a perfect recording, because if you jump into that loop of re-recording, you can always say, well, I could have done this better, or I could have done that better, even if it is your best. And I agree, it's not as maybe satisfying as playing live and being done with it. So yes, of course, it has to be a very good depiction of your playing. And of course, you should focus on that, especially that the beginning is quite clean. But I think the question you have to ask you, sorry, there's a fire truck outside my window. I think the question you have to ask yourself is, are any technical flaws detracting from the overall picture? If you have a very convincing music performance and you're really getting your idea across, then a few cracked notes here or there, no one is going to remember them. Of course, it should be at a certain standard, and it shouldn't overshadow your musicality when it gets distracting. But beyond that, I wouldn't worry so much about a note here or there. You're looking at the bigger picture, you're not counting individual mistakes.
Absolutely. I just want to reiterate that, that we're not looking for perfection. And this is making the recording actually is a great thing. If you start early, you have a chance to actually visit and revisit over a long amount of time. You don't have to do it all in one night or one weekend. And just kind of use those extra set of ears I mentioned to you earlier to give them a listen and get some advice. And your teacher knows you, as Kathy mentioned, and they might say, well, you generally have better intonation than that. Let's get another take of that movement of that piece, or something like that. Just presenting yourself in the best possible light. You want to give yourself choices. Choices is a really important thing in this factor of making the recording. And then you submit what you have. There are a couple mistakes on it. We're not going to, that's not going to detract the musical part of it for us. So.
That's great. And I would amplify what all three of you said, that having another set of ears, another set of musically trained ears on a recording is just priceless. I mean, anyone who's listened to themselves perform in a recorded session knows that it's impossible to listen and not hear all the little things, you know, that little voice was telling you while you were singing, or in my case, singing, and you hear, and you just like, oh yeah, that's super obvious. But then somebody who knows your voice, even a teacher, can hear it and say, no, that sounds great. Don't worry about that. And alternatively, they could say what Al did, which was, you know, your intonation can be better. So let's try it. Let's try it again. It helps you keep yourself from just getting on that gerbil wheel, right? That hamster wheel, and going over and over and over again. Somebody can throw you a lifeline. All right. Any other questions from our attendees? Got this great expertise here. Don't let it go to waste.
You know, I was going to add one thing, Stephen. Igor was saying something that led me to remember something else. Is we don't care how difficult the piece is. A lot of times people think they have to come in, oh, if that's a really difficult piece of music, if I do that, that'll be very impressive. Choose something that you sing well, you play well, that shows the beauty of your tone, the accuracy of the pitch, the beautiful phrasing, and we're much more impressed by that than trying to sing something that you shouldn't be singing for 10 years. So don't worry about how difficult the piece is. Choose from the standard repertoire. Thanks for letting me add that in.
And that's good advice too for, when you're doing a live audition. If you don't bring a standard repertoire piece and you have an accompanist like vocalists do, there's no guarantee that that pianist will know that piece, and it could potentially go really off the rails. And then you're worried about the ensemble rather than just singing or playing your best.
I couldn't agree more. And the same thing goes for all string players who are watching or will be watching later. It's really all about how you perform the piece. You don't have to come in as an undergrad playing Tchaikovsky Concerto or Paganini 4. Even the piece that you might consider is quite easy, there's really no such thing. And we can actually, a lot of the times, hear more from a Mozart concerto, which I know is often listed as intermediate level, quote unquote, than from a piece that you're really struggling with because it's too advanced. So really there's focus on something that you play well, not something that is considered very difficult. So that's a brilliant piece of advice. Absolutely.
I mentioned this earlier as well. It's very important because there's going to be a nervousness factor, right? Both live and even on the tape sometimes. We want you to do well. We're rooting for you. We're looking for that great musicality. That's really all we're listening for. We're not trying to check boxes with mistakes. And look at it that way. So something to keep in mind as you're making these tapes and doing these auditions from a confidence perspective.
I wanted to connect that back with what Igor was saying a few questions ago, that it's about communicating the idea that you want to communicate, right? That he wants to be affected by your performance, and having a clear musical idea of what it is you want to say. And that is typically more easily done with a piece that you know really well, right? That you have your mental image is concrete. And if you pick one that you think is impressive, but you don't have that idea, that's probably a step in the wrong direction.
Oh, I thought of one more thing. that my colleagues were talking. I thought, oh, I should have said such and such. Make sure, if you have a beautiful picture, that you put a beautiful frame around it. And when you introduce yourself, make sure that you are using your voice in a resonant fashion, that you're not speaking too quickly. This happens all the time. We get nervous and all of a sudden we drop our lines. I'm so and so and so and so, and I'm going to play such and such and such and such. Take your time. You want us to hear the name of what you're performing, your name, and maybe the composer. You might want to say the composer as well. So look at them as three separate ingredients, and you're going to announce that. Hello, my name is Kathy Kasch. I'll be singing Strauss's Alle sehen. And take your time. Maybe practice in front of your family or a good friend or your voice teacher and ask them, can you hear what I'm saying? Can you understand what I'm saying? Because it's annoying when you're saying, what'd they say? So, and this happens in person, and it happens on recorded auditions as well. So dress nicely, use your most resonant voice, smile at your audience out there, and that's putting a beautiful frame around a beautiful picture.
Kathy, they just put a question in the Q&A that is for you, all right? For vocalists, is it better to submit 2 classical pieces or a classical piece in something like musical theater?
Either is fine. We want your very best. If you have been doing musical theater in high school and you feel like you can just show your acting chops and your personality, or maybe you can show that you can belt as well as sing legit or classically, great. If you feel like you've got 2 great art songs instead, that's fine too. Choose the 2 pieces that you feel like you could sing standing on your head and do your very best.
And another question, based on what you just said, Kathy, about introducing your pieces, do you expect students to do that in their videos as well, or do you just want to hear them sing or play?
I like it when they tell me what they're going to do, and when they tell me who they are. So number one, we make sure we've got the right person. I think it also breaks the ice. I really do. So yes, I like that. Maybe some other departments don't care about that, but I sure do.
Mhm. Well, singers are sometimes a little different.
Yeah, that's right.
Igor and Al, how do you feel about that?
I would actually also prefer it, especially this year. It is nice to hear your voice, especially when we have a lot of auditions to go through. So absolutely at the beginning, introduce yourself and announce your repertoire, maybe at the very beginning, not between pieces. We have it in front of us, but things change and it's just much easier. And yes, it does break the ice. It's more personable. So I would say the same thing goes for the string department.
I agree with that as well. We regularly do not get that, but that would be actually a welcome addition to just watching the video and not hearing the person talk. Sort of a precursor to the interview when we meet you later, which is really great. You know, it made me think of another thing. This is not required at all from anyone, but I really love it when people send in like a little resume of what they've done. Sometimes they'll come to the audition and bring one and pass it out to the whole faculty. And boy, that spurs a lot of questions for us to ask them during the interview. And it shows kind of quickly and completely what that person has done in their musical career thus
far. This next question is pertaining to composition. So let me just give this a shot. Patricia is wondering if it's okay to turn in digitally rendered compositions rather than performed live. And yes, it is okay. In fact, it's not actually required that you turn in recordings of your compositions if you're going for classical composition. If you're able to send us a recording of it, that's great. And yeah, go ahead and turn in the digital, the MIDI file, I think is what you mean, for that composition, and the faculty will take a look at it. But the basic requirement is just the scores. Good question, Patricia.
All right, probably have time for one, maybe two more questions if you have any, attendees, and if not, we'll thank our panelists and wrap up. So we'll give it another minute for you to drop another question in the Q&A before we call it a day.
Maybe until we get another question, does any of our three faculty members want to share your, let's say, worst audition experiences and then best audition experiences?
Boy.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Kathy.
Me?
Yeah. Oh, I saw you pop on. I thought you were talking.
Oh, no, I was
okay.
mumbling and.
Oh, all right. Well, I had one many years prior to actually winning this job here as a professor of trumpet. I auditioned and interviewed for a professor position at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And it turns out I arrived and had to go to the interview as sick as a dog. And just trying to bring myself through the whole, several day process. And the first thing that the committee did was they took me to the Lincoln Symphony Orchestra. And because of my sickness, I actually fell asleep in the concert of the Lincoln Symphony. So I think that was definitely over for me at that point, and I just struggled through the interview and the playing portion of that. So that was definitely my worst audition, being sick. And I guess one of my best ones was here. When I applied here, I got to play in a lot of great groups, and it was very, very informal. And it just put me at ease, for sure. Yeah.
All right.
If Kathy and Igor don't want to share, I will share one because it's a cautionary tale that will be instructive for what I hope will be a more prepared auditioning class than I was in this example. during auditions, I just lost track of the schools I was applying for. And I showed up at a school and realized that they required more rep than I had prepared. And right before I went in and had to pull out a Donati piece because it was an Italian art song that they needed. And I pulled out a Donati piece that's strophic. So, you get the same melody with different words, many verses. And I just could not come up with a single word in that audition. And they made me sing all 4 verses of that piece. And I just made Italian sounding words for about 4 minutes on stage, and they didn't put me out of my misery. And I did not get in there, folks. So be organized. Go watch that webinar that Angela and I did a couple weeks ago about organizing your information and knowing what schools require what pieces, and don't repeat my mistake. It was a bad one.
Well, I think, Stephen, too, I think the sight reading portion of the audition really throws a lot of people for a loop. I know in our department, a lot of singers come to music late. They find out in high school after the voices have changed, oh, I could sing, and then they fall in love with it. So their theory background sometimes is not as strong. Sometimes it is if they've played an instrument their whole life, but take your time, breathe. There is a sight reading portion. We're not giving you some strange atonal thing to read. Get your key center and get your rhythm going if it's in 3/4 or 4/4. And these are indications. This is good information for us because we're saying, they know how to approach a piece of music. And if you go a little bit off during the sight reading, make sure you get back home to do, probably is what it is. So don't let it panic you, but maybe practice sight reading a little bit with your piano teacher, a voice teacher, or choral teacher before you come.
Along the same lines, just one last tip that Kathy just reminded me of, especially pertaining to string players, because unlike singers, unfortunately, we do not require you to have a pianist at your audition. We would certainly prefer one, but this year, due to COVID, if you have one, it's fantastic. If not, of course, we're understanding. But please do show us that you have an understanding of the context of the piece. So especially if it's a sonata or a concerto, show us that you know what the tutti are, that you know the pianist's or the orchestra's part. You don't have to stand there counting all the rests, but please do acknowledge that there is another line besides the solo line. We want to hear that you're aware and that you've studied the score and that you've heard various recordings of it. And also please, since I'm on the subject, also be aware of some historical context of your composition. It doesn't often come up, but it might, and it will show us a lot if you demonstrate you've put in the time to study the background of the piece, not just the notes.
Actually, we had a few at the end of the hour, at the 11th hour questions coming in, so we'll handle these really quick. This first one is there in order that the professors will be watching our audition videos in. So they were talking about introducing themselves along with rep that they'll be playing, scales, and do you want to hear things in a certain order, like scales and then pieces? And then I would say to this person, if you end up uploading videos that are separate, each song is separate, just label the video 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's your best chance of having the faculty view it in that order. But would any of you like to say in what order you would like to hear the rep or the requirements of the audition?
Kathy, do you want to jump in or no? So if you were to do a live audition, which is how we normally do things, not this year, you always get a choice of what piece you want to start with. So for the string department, it's absolutely your choice. I would say if you're recording scales, put them at the end. But if you think concerto is the best opening for you, start with the concerto, then Bach, and then Paganini or an etude. But it's entirely up to you. You'll still listen to everything. So pieces first, and then you can put a scale at the end.
And the last question, unless Al, you wanted to jump in on that one.
Oh, we're just similar to that, except we usually start with scales. And just a quick piece of advice on that: enjoy your scales, play them as musically as possible, as beautifully and as musically as possible. Not just as an exercise, to check that part of the audition off. It does make a difference, actually. Thank you.
Last question, Kathy, for you, the sight reading. Will the auditioner be given the key that they're going to be singing or playing in? And I get the two out.
Yes, we'll give you the starting note,
Okay.
right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And remember, it's not atonal. It's just something fairly simple.
Despite your best efforts, Kathy, Ryan says he's already nervous about the sight reading.
Is that Ryan Gully?
Thanks,
Ryan Gully out there. Oh, we're gonna give him the atonal stuff. Yeah, hold on.
All right, and with that, it's 5:30, so we'll wrap it up here. I'm going to go ahead and put my email address in the chat. I invite any of our panelists to also, if you are willing to answer further questions, go ahead and put your email in the chat as well. And the general music admission emails going in there as well. Thank you all so much for being our panelists and our wonderful attendees, for your excellent questions. We are here, as always, in the Lamont Admission office to answer questions and to help you through this oftentimes confusing process of applying and auditioning for music school. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.